Martin program is the Buddy Martin Show. It's a Wednesday night. That means we got Allie Peak Wilbur. Always a good night when she's here. And tonight, we've also got our good friend Zach Alberti, who I believe is taking his son home from practice. Nice enough to pop on here. And Allie's in the orange and blue room. We're coming back to her in a minute. We're going to roll a break here in a second. But first, let's go right to Zach, the busiest man in show business. He was the guy that got me in all this trouble in the first place when he suggested I buy Gator bait. But you know what? Been quite a ride. Hello, Zach. I can hardly see you, but I do see you.
Oh, what's going on, buddy?
You, man, thank you for doing the show tonight. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Look, I see a dark silhouette, but I know you're there. And thanks for taking on short notice doing this. And let me get some questions to you right away. I know you're the man. You've had some terrific stories on Gators on 9 on 3, and the hot topic, of course, is recruiting. There you go. It's recruiting, and there's a camp today. And I thought about this and this fact these are ninth graders in camp, and these ninth graders are already being recruited. It's amazing. Pretty soon it'll be starting in the first grade, Zach.
Yeah, the recruiting process is just feels like every single cycle will get sooner and sooner, and the evaluation process and the relationship building process, that starts very early, and obviously for the elite guys and some of these guys coming into high school that you can tell sometimes as ninth graders, eighth graders that they are going to be SEC caliber type players. The schools start putting in time and resources, this early on, and obviously with camp season going on, Florida had its swamp shootout today. It's 7-on-7 tournament. It's a great opportunity for these guys to kind of come on campus, get exposure with the coaching staff, and they handed out some new offers today as well.
They did. Any news on anything you can tell us without scooping yourself?
Yeah, I mean that nothing specific on that front. I think obviously a lot of people are monitoring the visit with Austin Simmons, the quarterback commit. He just took a trip to Ole Miss and is now back at Florida, and I guess trying to figure out what he wants to do. So I think he's probably the one that everybody was monitoring the most. But they had 17 official visitors last weekend. They're going to have another 14 this weekend, and I think they got 16 more scheduled for the weekend after that. So they're just bringing them in.
Hauling them through there. I want to talk about the big recruiting party at Spurrier's, but first, I understand Simmons today said he's coming back for his official visit on Wednesday, right?
I'm not sure about official, because
That's what we were told.
He's still a 2025 prospect. So um, I'm not sure if he can take an official yet, unless he's officially reclassified. Um, so that'll be something to monitor. But regardless, he's here.
Yeah.
He's in Gainesville today, and he's going to be in Gainesville tomorrow. Whether or not that can be official or not, I think is irrelevant. The fact that he came back to Gainesville after going to Oxford and checking out the Rebels.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause had he just not shown up or kind of left everybody in the dark, I think people would be wondering what's going to happen. So I would imagine that this is going to get resolved pretty soon, and whether he chooses to reclassify, whether he chooses to enroll, whatever the case may be, I think we're going to find out soon.
Your friend told me we call him the Minister of Information. You know what I'm talking about?
I would imagine that's probably.
It's who?
I would imagine that's Graham.
That's Graham Hall. I want to see if you remembered his official title here. Was the minister? It used to be our official. Now he's graduated and he's got his own big shot deal at 247. But does a good job. He told me on Monday night, was it last night? I don't know, night before last, that he reminded me. He said, "Why would you want to use an official visit if you don't have to?" And he says, "In 60 days, I think he said, you'll be able to take unlimited visits." Is that true? And what's that all about?
Yeah, that starts July 1st.
Ooh,
You can, it's basically a new rule that was put in place by the NCAA Division Council, and I think you're already seeing some effects of that in the month of June, even though it's not official yet until July. You're already seeing prospects that have kind of loaded up their schedule
Yeah.
and are taking a lot of trips because they know come the fall time they're going to be able to take more OVs if they want to. But school still can only get 56 visits. So even though prospects can take as many as they want,
I got you.
schools are still limited
That's
to
true.
56. So they have to be selective still about who they decide to bring on campus. And, is a kid really serious about Florida? Is he somebody that they
Right.
want to sign, or is this just a guy that's trying to get another free trip of as
Sure.
many as he can take now?
Why wouldn't you? I would
So
have. I'd take everyone I could. Spurrier took like 8 trips, so he was in Johnson City. So it didn't like that hadn't been done before. But I get it. They got to do something. They can't control everything. But I think they ought to buy some stock in Spurrier's Ground and Grill because ain't gonna be losing a lot of guys out there. Now I know you weren't at the party because we couldn't go, and neither could anybody, and even the big boosters. But the one at Spurrier's, by all the reports I read and heard and saw, and my spies told me it was a resounding success. And there were a lot of great comments there from by players. Of course, DJ Glagway was the recruiting czar, the table hopping around. There were 7 at a table. Taylor, the wide receiver from Ohio State, was at the Urban. I got Urban on my mind. I had him on the show last night. Billy was at the table. He had Taylor with him, and next to them was DJ Lagway. There were like 17 kids there, and all the words I got back: fabulous, unbelievable, great. Katie Harris is a star. What reports did you get out of there?
yeah, obviously, first of all, that's a big weekend. That's the most official visitors that Florida's had in the last 20 years. I think it might be a school record. I'm not sure if Spurrier had a visit weekend that had 18, 19 kids, but that's what it would take. I mean, in the last 20 years, we haven't seen this. Usually it's just been 12, 11, 10. That's kind of, once you get double digits, that's kind of the
Right.
big visit weekend. So for them to have 17, 14 this coming weekend, 16 the following weekend, it's impressive that they lined it up. So that's number one, is just that they were able to get all these kids scheduled, get them to show up, get them to say yes when you had so many other programs that were trying to get them on campus for the same time. So I think that's a win. And then I think they were strategic about who they choose to bring for each weekend. And they're trying to bring guys, there were 3 from the state of Texas. There are certain guys for certain positions. You got a quarterback and a wide receiver taking a trip together. A lot of that was very strategic so that they paired guys with certain players that they wanted them to be around. And I thought it was interesting. I think talking to one of the offensive linemen that visited Williams, he felt like a lot of the players on the visit got along great and kind of acted like they've known each other for a while, and they like they have similar personalities. So I think that was intentional by the staff so that these guys could get a feel for the players that could be potentially their teammates.
Sure.
And if they get a good feel and they get a good experience with them, that might help in the decision-making process.
Right. And by the way, I only keep you a couple of minutes. I promise I wouldn't keep you more than 10. But I do remember this happened once before. There was a guy named Brandon Seiler and Tim Tebow who got together at the All-Star game and said, let's go to school together. How'd that work out? Fairly good, I'd say.
Well,
So,
we're about to we get to see a whole documentary on it soon.
I know. We had Urban on the show last night. There's a rumor out there. Some people saying it's going to be a hit job, all that stuff. I've heard people say that. I asked Urban about it, and he said no. He says, we were very happy to do this. And he said, we worked with the people. He said, look, he said, did things happen we wish didn't happen? Of course they did. And I just pointed to the book over my head here, right there. Let's see. And said, that book that we wrote called Urban's Way, you might have heard of it, by the way, I said to him. There was things there I'm sure you weren't happy about, too, as well. But you were fair enough to let me just write the book. So there are going to be some things in it that, are not beautiful, but it's really the story of what a remarkable run they had. And I mean, like Urban said, the 2016 was really good. The 2018 was a great team, maybe one of the top 10 of all time. I don't know. I say so. We'll see how that works out. Final thing from you: give me a good juicy tidbit on what you're hearing about how things are going for Graham Mertz and Billy and the quarterbacks and what they're doing in the workouts.
Yeah, obviously right now they're in summer regimen phase, so this is kind of a key time, not just for guys like Graham, but all the leaders that they've kind of identified through the off-season workouts that they get
Mm-hmm.
to lead these regimen teams that they
Mm-hmm.
split up. So I know that Graham is one of those guys, and as you would expect as a quarterback, and I think this is an important time for him. He still hasn't won the job, even though I expect him to be the starter at Utah, and I know a lot of other people do, but he's still got to
Mm-hmm.
kind of check every box leading up to the season and leading up to training camp, and obviously going through summer workouts, which is what he's doing right now. So um, this is an important time. I think that they're probably chomping at the bit to get back on the practice field and start playing some real football. But I know that this offseason, the way that he's attacked it, Graham specifically, we've heard nothing but good things just from program sources about how he's gone about his business, the way he shows up in the building, his presence, I think, around the players and the staff. It's one of the reasons why he was brought here, and why they felt like he could be a guy to lead this football team.
Good stuff from Zach Alberti. You can read him on On3 or Gators Online. He's got some of the best stuff out there. Appreciate your time. I know you made an extra special effort after bringing your son home from practice. How did he do, by the way, at practice?
Well, it was actually a game. Buchholz put it on him pretty hard,
Ooh.
but their JV team I think is all 11th graders, so we got a lot of ninth graders on the Santa Fe team, so they weren't quite up to the task, but they competed nonetheless.
There you go. Like that competing part. Thank you, Zach. Appreciate it very much.
All
All
right,
right, my
good
man.
stuff, buddy.
Thank you. Good
Take
stuff
care.
from you. All right. And waiting in the orange and blue room. And by the way, Brendan, if you're listening, I can go ahead and read this spot live here. And while we get Alec ready to come on, it's a short one. I want to tell the folks at Titan MRI how much we appreciate their support of this program. They usually sponsor the featured segments most days, and tonight they sponsor this segment with both Zach and Allie Peak Wilbur, who will be here in a moment. I'll tell you, Titan MRI is worth a short drive to Gainesville. No insurance, no problem. You can pay with cash or card with the same day scheduling available. You can start feeling better today. Titan MRI is North Central Florida's premier independent MRI facility. Come see why hundreds of patients are visiting our Gainesville location from Ocala, Marion County, and the villages. That's TitanMRI.com. All right, let's go see if we can get our friend Allie. If I had a company, she'd be my CEO because she can balance four things going on at one time. She has four children, and of course, if you have if you have one child, ask Brendan. He's got one. He thinks he's loaded with problems. Allie balances it beautifully. She does a terrific job, and I'm going to make an announcement tonight if I can. Allie, is it okay to do that?
It is,
Yeah,
sure.
we've been talking a little bit lately, and I'm a big admirer of her work. And I just had an idea she might also be a very good writer. I've never seen much of her writing, but based on what she does with her podcasts on YouTube, which is very good, a peek at the Gators with Ali Peak Wilbur, excuse me. And I've asked her if she would join us to do some articles. And it sounds like a proposal. And she said yes. So we're very excited by the fact that in addition to having her on as a guest regularly, where she does a terrific job, now we'll get to read her in print too. So, Allie, we're really glad to hear about that. Happy that we're going to be able to work with you and appreciate the fact that you trust us enough to get on board with a bunch of jerks like us, okay?
I'm excited about it. It's going to be
Yeah,
fun.
it's going to be good. Well, okay, so talk to me about what you've been hearing about the big party at Spurrier's, any of the stuff going on in recruiting. I know you know more than recruiting, but this season right now, we're talking a lot about it. What's the deal? Is Billy making up ground? Do we know? It's too early to
Yeah.
tell.
So, I think that this weekend was a success. Everybody that I've talked to that was there or around the program this weekend was really happy with how it went. I was kind of surprised we didn't get a commitment or two coming out of the weekend, but I have some thoughts on that. One, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know that UF is in a position to really demand commitments from players at this moment. I think, Georgia can say, hey, listen, I need you to decide you're for us or you're not. Alabama can say that. Clemson can say that. I don't know that Florida is in a position to do that, one. Two, I definitely think with the more lax rules about visits, what universities are allowed to spend, that there is kind of the mindset in players that like, hey, I'm going to enjoy every visit I can before I, commit to the program where I'm going to spend the next 3 or 4 years. I don't think it's a bad sign. I mean, I would have loved for us to walk away with a couple of people. I thought Chris Jones was one that could possibly commit to Florida. LJ.
Now, which one is he? Is he the lineman?
He's a linebacker out of Virginia.
Okay.
He came in town with his parents, and they made a really big deal about him coming. He is a really, really good linebacker. I think he fits in really well with what
four-star, 5-4.
Yeah, 4-star linebacker. He just moved up into the top 150 for on 3. He may move up even more than that as his season kind of gets going. But listen, he's got big size. He's somebody that UF really, really wants. I do think he ends up as a Gator. I was kind of surprised it didn't happen this weekend. I think it will happen sometime soon. I also think we're going to get Dalen Evans. He's from Texas A&M. I think he's going to flip. I don't know if we'll see him maybe decommit from Texas A&M and then commit to Florida or just come outright and flip. But he supposedly really, really enjoyed the weekend. I think that's somebody we get. He's the 4-star defensive lineman. And, he has become kind of buddies with Lagway. They purposely had Lagway come. He's from Texas as well. So, there's some interesting relationships. I do think Billy Napier kind of plays chess, not checkers, with these recruiting visits. And Zach alluded to that in your conversation that you just had with him. Like, there's a lot of thought that goes into who comes, which weekend, and why. And some of it's location, some of it's position, some of it's, personality type. But there's a lot of thought process that goes into this. And obviously, anytime you get DJ Lagway on campus, that's huge for recruiting. He's probably been Florida's best recruiter this cycle.
Yeah, if he didn't make it in pro football, they'd hire him back as a recruiting chief.
Yeah.
Because he's probably doing a great job. What we were talking about. What did you hear about the Spurrier's party? Anything?
I heard everybody was impressed with Spurrier's restaurant, that they got to see a lot of the memorabilia. They went and played at Dave & Buster's beforehand, which a lot of players put that on their social media. They seem to really enjoy that. I kind of think the highlight of the weekend was the social media team and all of the still photography and the videos that came out. Florida's media department is really probably the best in the country at stuff like that. Their marketing department, the technology that UF has is really light years ahead of pretty much everywhere else. And the players love it. If you go on Twitter and you look at any other social media, you can tell they're getting emailed the edited videos, yesterday and today, because they're flooding their page with all of the cool stuff that they shot over the weekend. And this is the way to teenage boys' hearts, apparently. So, it seems like that was one of the real highlights, but coaches spent tons of time with players. There were some players that said like they felt like their position coach didn't even leave their side the whole weekend. And, that's important. That's important for these relationships to get established, for them to continue to grow them, and for these families and these players to trust this coaching staff.
I'm going to tell you about a little story I'm working on here. I've had some fun with it. And talking about coaches, recruiting, head coaches, recruiting, and dancing. We all know the Brian Kelly story, right? Whatever. And it seems like that's the popular thing. The players love to see the coach dance, right?
Right.
And so I've dug up an old story on Steve Spurrier, which I think is hilarious.
Okay.
And he was recruiting Marcus Lattimore, who was a tremendous prospect from a little town in South Carolina. And he was recruiting him hard, and because he was a great player. And so he went out, I guess, to some place with the family, and someone came up to him and said, Coach Spurrier, he said, Marcus's mama wants to dance to you. Really? Yeah, she wants to do the cha-cha. Okay?
Oh, my goodness.
He said, okay. I said, what happened? He said, I danced the cha-cha, and Marcus came to South Carolina.
Oh, my goodness. That is hysterical. I would pay money to see Steve Spurrier dance the cha-cha.
That's what everybody says. I had Urban on Mario yesterday, and he said, I would like to see that. I said, I would too. Now I've seen Spurrier dance. I was at his 50th birthday party when he had it many years ago, and he and Jerry dancing on the floor, as all of us were. Nothing wild and crazy, like more like a 70 versions of the jitterbug or something, the boogaloo, whatever you want to call it. And he's pretty good on his feet, you might suspect. But yeah, so dancing's the thing. If you want to get the good recruits, you got to dance, I guess. So.
You got to dance, I guess.
On another note, Florida got a basketball player today, Pullen. I got a little funny comment to my guys. He plays guard. I said, "Oh, great! Florida got a Pullen guard." Unfortunately, wrong sport. And so I guess he was from UC Riverside, and
yep,
our guy, as others did too, but Matt Quartararo has done some good work for it. Had a story about him. It's on GatorBait now. For those of you who like to read, go to GatorBaitMedia.com, sign up for it. Soon you'll be reading Allie Peak Wilbur, a burgeoning star of all media here. So looking forward to that. I want you to write a piece about your grandfather.
Yeah, I definitely want to do that.
That picture, I can't see it tonight. I guess it's not there next to it, but whatever it is, of your grandfather. And for those who don't know, go ahead and hold it up.
Yeah, here we go. Let's touch back.
Scotty Peak Wilbur. And I actually am old enough to have seen that picture. And those are what they call the old lawhead shots. And he, of course, was a really good receiver. And he went on to a great political career after that as well. It was part of Gator royalty. And now since that time, his son was Allie's dad. Yeah. And, of course, he played at Florida, right?
Yeah, my dad.
And then her brother played at Florida, right? And did your company cousins play there? I don't know.
My dad's cousin is Gene Peak, who played there.
Well, I know Gene very well. He's one of my good friends, and I immediately asked, "Is this the same Peak family?" And I listened when he and Wayne McCall were at Cal High School. I covered his team and encouraged him to go to Florida, and still talk to. Gene is a member of GatorBait's lifetime memberships and reads everything we do there. So Gene,
I will tell you the best story about Gene's son, Colin. Yeah. So, Colin originally played for Georgia Tech, and then he transferred to Alabama.
Yeah.
So when Eric played for the national title, his cousin came back from Afghanistan, and flew directly into Arizona to go to this game. He had been fighting for us.
Eric Wilbur, of course, is her husband who punted for the Gators, in case you don't know. Another one.
And he brought this coin back from Afghanistan that had a gator head on one side and it said "Go Gators" in Arabic on the back. So Eric wore it in his hip pad during the 2006 national championship game.
Nice.
When my brother was on the 2008 team, Scott wore that coin in his hip pad for the 2008 national championship team. So when Colin played for Alabama in the 2009 national championship game,
he did not have that coin when he caught that touchdown
pass. He
wore
that coin in his hip pad, and we didn't give it to him originally because we're like, he plays for Alabama. But I called him. He was in California, and I said, "Listen, if we send this to you, will you wear it for good luck?"
Right.
And he's like, "I will." So we overnighted it to the hotel in Pasadena, and he wore that Gator coin in his hip pad when Alabama won the 2009 national championship.
And he caught the winning touchdown pass.
And he did. So that coin has won 3 national championships. I actually had a cousin, Bo Peak, who played for Stanford too. So we always told him, if Stanford gets to the national championship,
you got the coin.
But they never got there.
You got to do that story. Take a picture of that coin, and let's do that. Yeah. We'll get all the Peaks on the phone, get some quotes, and that's a wonderful story. That's a wonderful story. I mean, that's one worth keeping and talking about.
That is one of my favorite,
it's a great story.
Stories.
Those Peaks are everywhere, man. I'm telling you, they're everywhere. So, and Allie's got 4 kids at home. I like to say 5 because she's got Eric.
I do. I really have 5. That's
yeah. When I talked to her on Monday, she put to pull her hair out. Your car was broken down. She was calling AAA, and I thought, man, I felt so bad for you. I've been there, not with 4 kids.
That was just another day in life.
I can't imagine you being anything but so sunshiny and, as you are every time you come on the program. But I know we all have bad days. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about What do you want to talk about? I could ask you some questions, but what do you want to talk about?
Well, you talked about a little bit the film with Urban that's coming out. I'm
Mm-hmm.
really interested to see what they have to say. I was a little disappointed they didn't call Eric because there's nobody that started more games during that time window than
Really? Yeah.
Eric did. But I there's so many good stories that happened during that time that I
Mm-hmm.
hope that that's what they focus on. I mean, obviously every team has
Right.
problems that arise, and I think that those get like put under a microscope when you're good.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many interesting stories, and there were so many guys who fought through so much adversity. Urban changed the life of so many guys on that team that I really do hope that those are the kind of stories that they choose to focus on, because there was so much good and so many interesting things that that happened to that team. And I think so many of them are such good men, fathers, pillars of the
Yeah.
community now too, and a lot of that had to do with you know the way that Urban coached all of them.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's highlighted some in there. But I will be
Well,
holding my
he's pretty positive about it. He
good.
said also in the interview, which by the way, posted now again. If you missed it on GatorBait, for your members, you can go there and see it. But in that interview, Urban talked about the fact there were people that they talked to a lot of people, but a lot of people didn't make it into the video. Apparently, he said, "I'm not sure how they chose them." He said,
Yeah,
I gave him names of others, and they didn't come." But that's how it goes,
yeah,
particularly. But there was one story going around. Oh, it's going to be a hit piece, whatever. And Shane Matthews asked me on Monday, "How's that work when you do a piece like that? Do you get to see what's in it? Do you get paid?" No. Really, anybody worth their salt. You were in television, you know this. That producer's not going to come in and just let you say anything you want to say. He's going to
right,
like some comments over those and leave some out, and he's going to have the editorial control of it if he's any
yeah,
good as a producer. And so some people think, "Oh, he'll just do what they want." No, Urban, and I pointed to that book over there again. I said, "That book right there, I appreciate you letting me do that book and really not and tell me what to put in it, and
right,
give me editorial freedom," which is a writer and a producer
yeah.
really appreciate. All right, so here we go. I'm going to give you a chance to wrap up. Where do you think things are going for the Gators? Number one in recruiting. Number two, for Billy Napier, do you think he's going to make headway? And we all know that he's got headwinds and the issues he
Yeah.
faces. What's your gut feeling? You're pretty good at this. What do you think?
So I think we're going to see a lot of improvement this year. Billy Napier said something this week. I did a video on it actually that really kind of stuck out to me. He said that this team is light years ahead of where they were last year. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that that would necessarily seem super remarkable coming from most college football coaches,
Mm-hmm.
but Billy Napier doesn't seem to be a sunshine pumper. One, two, he doesn't talk much, and I feel like
Yeah.
when he does what he says, his has power. And I am not sure if he's saying that because it's, kind of a battle cry to his players, like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I see you. This is a challenge. I don't necessarily know that he's saying, hey, we're light years ahead. Like our record's going to be
Mm-hmm.
way, way better than it was. But I think that he's saying like he's got the right guys in place. They understand the systems that he has installed. They're moving towards the direction that he thinks that this program needs to go as a whole. But that sentence, that light years ahead, is people are going to continually reference back to it.
Right.
So if he doesn't finish with a better record than they had last year, I think people are going to say, what was he talking about? So I feel like he's got to be pretty confident with what he's putting together for him to be willing to say that. Like we talked about, just a couple minutes ago, how he plays chess, not checkers with recruiting. I think he does that with his words too. He does not shoot from the hip. That's not really his personality. So that kind of makes me pretty excited to see what Florida puts out. Now, listen, I'm not saying they're going to win 10 ball games. I don't think they are, but I think we are going to see real progress this season. And
Well,
recruiting wise too. I mean, I think they're already showing improvement from last season, but I think by the end of the month, Florida fans are going to be really happy with where they're sitting recruiting wise.
feels like they're making progress. But the only thing about that statement, chess, not checkers, that's what everybody used for Dan Mullen, including
Yeah.
me. So the chess game didn't work out too well for him. But
Yeah.
so I think they feel like they're making progress. But it's David Moulton who will be on next and tell us this. We're going to talk about the LIV golf thing. What a story that is, man. He'll tell you on heartbeat. Only thing that matters is what's the record going to be on the field.
Yeah.
He can't
Yeah.
go 3-8, or 3-9, and say we were making progress. Is he making progress on the scoreboard? it's going to happen there. By the way, did you follow the LIV and PGA merger at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm watching this happen in real time like you are, and clearly PGA's word doesn't mean a whole lot,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's a wild predicament that they have kind of created for themselves. But I'm interested to see, and there's probably some PGA guys who are not pumped that they didn't take the money when offered because they were trying to be
No doubt.
loyal.
No doubt. I read today they're going to be the guys are going to be heavily fined that
Hmm.
did, and then and the people who stayed are going to be compensated for it.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking they're going to take that penalty money and put it in the pot and say, okay, you guys like Rory and
Yeah.
Spieth, all you guys, you stayed, you get to keep this extra
Yeah.
50 million. Well, I don't know. Well, I know David Moulton's pretty good. He works in golf. He'll know some answers to that. But meanwhile, Allie, when we start her column, if that's our blog, what we're going to call it, we'll call it whatever she wants to, peek inside the gears, whatever. Soon,
Yes.
she has a few other things to do before she can get to it. I'm really excited about it because you're connected, you're smart, and I know you got writing skills. I know that because I'm not going to let Pingledor take credit for it either. You work. How long did you work for Dave?
Um, uh, 4 years, I believe.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. 3 or 4
Really,
seasons.
really good guy. Really fun guy. It
Yes.
didn't necessarily translate to his market sometimes, but it was
He
fun.
was fun to go on a road trip with.
Oh, I bet. And I had him on the show probably 30 times or more, and always had fun. So
Yep.
I hope he's doing well, Allie. All right, well, thank you. Okay, I got queued up by my producer, and I'm not doing something right, so let me go check on that. Allie, great to be with you, and we look forward to you joining the Gator Bait team soon here, all right?
Sounds good, buddy. Have a good night.
Yeah, you and all four of the kids. They're going to be Gator Bait people, too.
All 5.
All right, Allie Peak Wilbur, peek inside the Gators. Thanks. All right, let's do this commercial, and Dave is right there, and we always look forward to this, especially when there's a big story that's brewing, because he is very good. I heard part of the show today. Very good at dissecting. By the way, this particular graphic was put up yesterday. That's, of course, Jay Monahan. It says, I recognize everything I've said in the past in my positions. I recognize people are going to call me a hypocrite. You think? Anytime I said anything, I said it with the information I had at the moment. Okay. That's what the murderer said when he pulled the trigger. All right, so we'll get to Dave. And first, let's hear from our friends at Meldon Law. And we'll come back and hang on a second, buddy. What'd you do with that commercial you had right here? Brendan, you don't have that commercial, so I have to roll it. All right? I've got it right here, and here it is.
Jeffrey, what are you doing?
Well, I'm joining the band, of course. Since Meldon Law is the official law firm partner of the Florida Gators, I want to help.
Dad, we're litigators. Let's stick to helping people in the courtroom.
Well, can we still hang out and jam a little bit? At Meldon Law, we won't back down.
All right, thanks very much, Sir Jeffrey Meldon. We appreciate that. And we're going to go right back to the Orange and Blue Room and find our friend David Moulton and see if I can get your quotes posted up here. I'm not getting those, Brendan. I don't see them. But let's go see what David's got to say. I know he's got plenty. And you think he may have an opinion about this one? Boy, what a bombshell when we heard about that, Dave. Really something, huh?
Well, the timing was really something, buddy. I mean, I thought if they went to court next year and the LIV won, and I thought they would, that maybe something like this would happen sometime in 2025, 2026 at the latest. But for it to be negotiated, and clearly the PGA Tour was the one that sought them out and did the negotiating, because the LIV had been trying for over 4 years to do something, or not LIV, but the Saudi fund. What is it called? The PIF, PIF.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
they wanted to do something like this 4 years ago, and the only reason they created their own tour was because the PGA Tour wouldn't do business with them. So clearly, it was the PGA Tour 7 weeks ago, according to Jay Monahan, that began talking to the Saudis. So, I mean, we all know what happened here. It all involved money. I think it also involved the books. I don't think the PGA Tour in Discovery wanted their books exposed. I spoke with Mark Lai today, who's been a PGA Tour member since 1977. And Mark Lai said, we have been wanting to see the books forever. And he goes, so I was curious about this case just to be able to see the books. I mean, how can the PGA Tour be a not-for-profit organization? He goes, and then have $800 million in reserves a year ago, of which they've already pumped half of it into their tour to prop it up and have elevated events and all that. So this clearly involved money. I think the PGA Tour realized that having their books exposed, they could lose. And also, this is the only time, buddy, in the history of major American sports that the upstart league had far more money than the Premier League they were trying to compete with.
Yeah, because the AFL didn't have that much money when they went to the after the NFL. Although they did go after all the quarterbacks and name it to win a Super Bowl.
True,
but,
and the WHA signed Bobby Hull and others, but they didn't have as much money as the NHL. And you know, I mean, the ABA had some money, and they had Julius Erving and a couple of other stars, but they didn't have the money even of the struggling NBA. So, you know, I mean, the reason the Nets had to sell Julius Erving just to get in the league.
That's right. That's right.
So
I forgot about that. Yeah. Well, so it's easy for us to moralize. That's what we do as columnists and talk show hosts. And we should, when we see something, point out something that's wrong. I thought about it for a long time before I commented, because I can see the positives, but then there's that big negative hanging over your head. And I talked to a couple of friends of mine, and they are furious about it. I mean, just absolutely angry. And these are logical men who love the game of golf and play the game of golf and understand negotiations and compromise. But I guess, I don't know, a lot of things are wrong with it. First of all, nobody seemed to know. Secondly, there's all the guys who gave up bazillions of dollars not to jump. I think of poor Tiger out there playing. He's not out there necessarily just for himself. Of course, he wants to win. He knows his limits, but he was out to support the tour, support them, and he was there with Rory and the rest of the guys that came to they were really ticked off at guys like Mickelson, people who betrayed the tour. Now, look, I'm not going to play moralist here, because if the money came to me, I'd have a hard time turning it down too. It's easy to say when you're not the one turning the money down, lose the money. But anyway, there's a lot of things that are not right about it. David, which ones bother you the most?
Well, listen, when you spend a year and a half calling the other side Satan, and when you invoke September 11th at every opportunity,
right,
you can't then do a deal with Satan and just say, well, it was business. Well, listen, you chastised all the individuals who made a deal with Satan, as you called it. And that's what they did. They made a business decision. And so now in June of 2023, you make a business decision. Well, then just to follow your own words, you're every bit as bad as them. Sorry.
There's
no way around it. Yeah, of course they're being hypocritical here. Of course. You know, it does need to be pointed out, and I understand he's toe jam now. But over 90% of what Phil said a year and a half ago is proven to be right. I mean, he was. He is proven to be right. All right? Everything he said about the PGA Tour has proven to be true. Every single thing.
Such as?
He's right. Okay, what do you mean, such as?
No, give me your best example. I know what he said.
Buddy, how much time you got? How much money they had? Buddy, I can give you 30. How much money they actually had? Okay, how much money they were withholding from the players? Okay, those were the two biggies. Okay, then changing the rules. Okay, you could always play on other tours. PGA Tour never said no to you playing on another tour. Now, all of a sudden, you can't play on this one? You can play on the Asian, the South African, the European. You can't play on this one. Seriously? Okay. Honestly, they had never said no to people playing on other tours before. Now, all of a sudden, you can't play on this one? I mean, there's so many things he said about the PGA Tour which turned out to be true. And at the end of the day, and then when the other tour, when Satan's tour adopted a business model, okay, and purses that were this, and guess what the guys with the white hats did? They adopted a tour that looked financially as close to it as possible. The only thing that was different was they played 72 holes instead of 54. They had a cut midway through. They wore pants instead of shorts.
Yeah.
And live music was not playing on the course.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they followed Satan's business model and
did.
incorporated it as their own.
Yeah,
and then when financially they were getting their ass kicked and they were at major risk in the next year of damn near going bankrupt if they had lost in court, okay, they made a deal with Satan. That's what happened.
Exactly
here.
what I said on my show last night, like this, and it's obvious. A sport that prides itself on honor and fairness and honesty and integrity, you call penalties on yourself, just made a deal with the devil.
Well, and they called them the devil.
No.
I'm just quoting them. I'm quoting what they've said about the individuals and the entity that those individuals joined.
Yeah, and the 9/11 families, all the stuff that Monahan said.
Yeah,
and then, by the way, using that as a leverage point. Come on.
I mean, the quote that you posted there, okay? Because in one sense, that quote from Jay Monahan's true. I mean, a year ago, that's the other thing, buddy. You do realize LIV's first event was 370 days ago. I mean, the tour's only been playing golf basically for a year. Think about this. They brought the PGA Tour to their knees in a year. I mean, Phil's quotes were out there 6 months earlier, but they've only been playing golf for a year. I mean, they've played like 15 events, and they brought the PGA Tour to its knees. Guys they wouldn't do business with for 5 years. They said no continuously. They called them every bad name in the book. By the way, the PGA Tour saying we're in control, no, they're not, because the final board is going to
own the golf. So Saudis now own golf.
Do A, it's their money. B, they control all the sponsors that are going to be involved. If they say no, you're not going to be involved in the PGA Tour. And 3, if there's 6 people on the board, okay, do you know who has the controlling interest? You know who has veto power? The Saudi guy. He's the king of the board.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other 5 can say, we want to do this, but if he goes, I don't think so, it ain't getting done. Okay, so technically on paper, it says the PGA Tour is in control. They're in control if the Saudi guy lets them. Just think about it. It's his money. Is he going to let Monahan control his money? Hell no. All right, it's at least golf media. You disgrace to journalism. At least call it what it is. Now,
I think Sally Jenkins did in her column.
With all due respect, she's not a golf media.
Well,
she's not.
Wait a minute now. Hold on there.
She's not golf media.
She comes from golf. Wait a minute, David.
No, she comes from golf media.
And
but
she's covered a lot of golf, major championships, done probably hundreds of stories on golf media.
Yeah, but
what is golf media then?
Well, the difference is, first of all, she's national media, who just happens to, on occasion, have covered golf.
So does it mean
you know what golf media? No. You know what golf media is.
Well, beat guys. I don't think beat guys have the only ones that get it right. I mean, there's columnists that write about golf all the time.
But beat guys are the ones that in the last 48 hours have been getting the chapstick out and the knee pads and trying to spin this on behalf of the PGA Tour.
I don't go into that. I wouldn't go into that. I'm not going to buy that whole generality. There's a lot of it. Let's put this way.
Really? I'll tell you what. Besides Brandel Chambly saying this is the darkest day in the history of golf, tell me in the national golf media who slammed the PGA Tour.
I'm just going to give you this information. If you want to accept Sally Jenkins, I know a little about golf writers, and I can tell you that she's revered by most golf writers. I don't know all the big guys. What?
She's not. Listen, Sally, as a golf writer,
Hold it, David. Don't tell me that now. I know better than that, okay? I know a little bit about this, all right? Let me read a couple of paragraphs.
Buddy, Sally Jenkins only has one point of view, and we all know what it is. We all know the point of view Sally Jenkins is going to take on an issue before she sits down and starts typing.
Boy, that's pretty harsh, David.
Well, it is. I mean, buddy, she's a great writer. I mean, I couldn't carry her luggage, but buddy, she's the most liberal writer maybe in America.
See, there's that word. and this is what bothers me, is that people want to put brands on writers. Oh, he's a conservative or he's liberal. Let me tell you something. I work for one of the most liberal newspapers in the world, in the St. Petersburg Times. Damn fine paper, maybe the best I ever worked for. There are lots of people in there who are not, who didn't let political ideology affect the reporting. So they should keep that in mind. No,
I'll tell you what. You find one piece she's ever written that's not to the left of center. Seriously, find one.
Let's see if all right. Let me see if this is left of center. Okay, let's see what this is. I think this might not be considered to be left of here. Let's face it. Kepka and his fellow LIVers died for the Saudi blood money, like that guy pushing women and children aside to get in a lifeboat for Titanic. It was going to be a pretty funny thing watching him try to get back to the deck of the big ship. Rory McIlroy believes LIV golfers should be face punishment despite new Saudi partnerships. There still has to be a reckoning, he said. And she goes on to talk to quote people like that. I don't judge writers, good reporters, by their political parties and their point of view, because I think the great ones write through that without consideration of whether they're Democrat, Republican, or whatever they are. So as I said to you, there's this distorted picture that because someone works for a paper that happens to have a liberal editorial policy, everybody in the whole newsroom is a commie left pinky guy. I mean,
but that's not what I said at all. I said she specifically makes left-hand turns all day. That's all I said. I said if you tell me the issue, I can tell you where she is on the column. That's all. That's all. I know that going in. That's all. It has nothing to do with the paper she writes for or anything else. That's all. We'll agree to disagree on this one. Her father, by the way, is one of the 5 best writers ever.
Yeah, one of my heroes, my good friends, and she's one of the 5. I had a chance to hire her one time, and I kicked myself for not doing it. But anyway, the point is, we'll get off that subject because we don't agree on it. I think she's good enough to be able to see above any political bias or whatever to write the story as she believes to be true.
By the way, back to the point that she made about Rory, in which Rory said that, no. These guys just can't walk right back on this tour beginning next year. Phil may say it because sometimes Phil just can't stop himself. But what if somebody made the case for Phil and said, it's funny, considering how much money Phil just helped bring to the PGA Tour. First off, how much money they brought to the tour in the last year because of what Phil did. Hell, even Rory McIlroy, who would light Phil on fire if he could, said that ultimately what Phil has done helped the PGA Tour. That's number one. Now, think about all the money that Phil is bringing to the PGA Tour. I could argue, Rory, that Phil Mickelson has done far more for the PGA Tour in the last year and a half than you have ever done and ever will do. Okay? And he hasn't played a PGA Tour event. I mean, now, somebody could write that story, buddy. They could. I know it's not popular to do so, but Phil Mickelson just brought billions of dollars to the PGA Tour. He did. If he didn't have the either bad judgment or courage, whichever you want to call it, to make the jump, somebody of his stature had to make the jump for others to follow.
I can't buy that at all.
Really?
No,
you tell me,
no, because I'm not going to give reward somebody for being selfish and greedy and for selling out his mates and whatever and taking the money, and now he's a hero. No, he's one of the ones who was a quitter. He almost helped destroy the PGA Tour. Why is all of a sudden? Why is he a white knight?
He really destroyed it. They're playing for more money than ever before.
Oh, David, but you're skipping over the part about how the serious condition, how bad shape the tour was in. And guys like Rory, who, by the way, deserve a lot because they kept holding it together. I wasn't even a McIlroy fan. I have new respect for him. What the other guys did, got together. Tiger, bless him for going out there playing, limping around. He wanted to win, but he had obligations to show up to help preserve the PGA Tour. How about those guys are heroes? Not Phil Mickelson, who took all the money and ran. Now he's a hero? I don't think so.
I didn't say he was a hero, but I'm saying that at the end,
you just said he did more for anything else for the tour than anybody else.
He did more for the PGA Tour than Rory over the last 18 months. He brought billions of dollars to the tour. Rory brought press. That's it. Phil brought the Saudi money. If Phil doesn't make the leap, by the way, go back and look at everything that Phil wanted the PGA Tour to do before he made the jump. Guess what? They're now doing all of it.
I've heard that movie and seen that movie before when I was in the golf business, okay? And Phil was one of our guys that won our tournament 2 years, a friend of the Vickers family, and he was highly regarded by people. But Phil was always about Phil. I'll give him this.
Absolutely.
As someone I worked with, and I've followed him around and brought him into the press room and all that when I worked in media. And I saw him there were 100 people lined up outside for autographs. He said, I'll be back after the media, after the interview. And an hour later, he came out and signed every autograph. And he did some good things. But Phil has a little bit of a shady background himself. Okay?
But buddy, are we gonna? I mean, listen, if you want to criticize him for going to the LIV, that's fair game, okay? But Phil's selfish. Absolutely, he's selfish. Phil's had a gambling problem. Phil hasn't been faithful to Amy. Yeah, absolutely, it's all out there. Okay, it's all out there. Okay, but the fact of the matter is, if they had listened to Phil 2 years ago, okay, this whole Saudi thing never would have happened.
Look, I'm not going to be a defender for the PGA Tour. I had a belly full of them, all right? They're the ones who screwed our tournament over in Colorado and, decided to take the date and go do something else with it. It's politics of the worst sort. I get it. I think Dean Beeman did a good job, and then things went downhill as a commissioner. I don't know about Monahan. I think he's all about the dollar. But, I mean, look, we can argue about this all night long. I'm not defending the PGA Tour, okay? I don't want to defend it.
Well, I don't know how you can. I mean, honestly,
I'm not going to make Phil Mickelson a white knight to save you.
No. Listen, I don't think there are any heroes here. I don't. The whole story is a disgrace. The entire story is a disgrace. The entire sport should be ashamed of itself. They really should. Okay, there are a few individual golfers who shouldn't. They didn't do anything wrong. But the sport as a whole should be ashamed of itself. I mean, it should. And there are so many guilty people, it's tough to list them all. Okay, but for everything that everyone has said about the individual golfers and the LIV Tour, well, then you need to say it all about the PGA Tour. All of it. And my question would be, buddy, to the buddies that you mentioned at the beginning of this interview, how outraged they are. They not going to watch? I mean, because that's ultimately it. Okay, like I had a couple of people into our show.
They didn't watch LIV, I can tell you that. They did not watch
yeah, nobody watched the LIV. But, okay, are they not going to watch the PGA Tour now? Like I had a few people say, I've removed the PGA Tour app from my phone. I'm not going to follow the tour anymore. Oh, okay. My co-host's mom walked in last night to his house. First thing she said after hello was, well, I'm done watching golf.
I get it.
Okay. Now, that may be, you affect the TV ratings and, the crowds aren't as big at the events. Yeah, people will notice.
I think it will probably increase the ratings and getting the players back together and having they competed in the majors anyway. But, I think that's a positive. But all the sports washing and the terrible things the Saudis have done, human rights and the murdering of a journalist, that just can't be ignored. I mean, Daniel Snyder was a bad owner, but he wasn't that bad, okay? So I think that's the part.
Now, I will say, we've stopped being a moralistic nation a long time ago. I mean, we just have.
Wait a minute, moralistic or immoral? Which one is there? Because the difference in the two words.
There was a time when actually we would, Bill Bennett wrote the book 30 plus years ago, The Death of Outrage. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have fake outrage now. We don't have real outrage. I'll be honest with you, buddy. If I was a PGA Tour player, I would have tried Tuesday night at the players' meeting. I would have tried to engineer a boycott. We need to make a stand. We need to play the Pro-Am tomorrow, and we all need to leave. Okay? Sorry to RBC.
How many do you think would have done it? How many do you think would have done it?
I don't think 4 would have followed me to the airport. Okay, so quite
2.
Frankly, then what do they stand for? They can't skip the Canadian Open in protest? Really? They can't skip one event. Now, I also will say this. I have no idea how the players let Jay Monahan continue to be commissioner.
He's going to lose his job. McElroy skipped one, and it cost him a lot of money. Skipped 2.
Well, listen, they made a decision not to take the money. Okay. The other guys made the decision to take the money. And by the way, risk never playing on the PGA Tour again. I mean, they were told if you take the money, you'll never play here again. Oh, okay. Now, yeah, they'll be back next year.
What would you have done, David?
Oh, I would have taken the money. Now, I will say, in Mickelson's case, to me, it's a hard decision for this reason. Mickelson was going to be the voice of golf. He was going to have one of the two jobs, either CBS or NBC. It probably would have been CBS. He's tight with Nance. He was in Nance's wedding, okay, and he's a Masters champion. Okay, so my guess is that Phil would have, been in the tower with CBS. Okay, and also his legacy, his reputation, that sort of deal. And remember when Phil did this, it was less than 6 months removed from winning the PGA, when he was at, popularity-wise, arguably his most popular. And he could have just sailed off into the golfing sunset, and we debated whether he's one of the 10 best or 15 best of all time, blah, blah, blah. And he would have represented the old guard, because Tiger's not going to be able to play much, at least not until he could use a cart. So, I mean, Phil, in terms of image, reputation, legacy, okay, he risked and lost a lot. He put $200 million in the bank account, but I mean, we all know what he lost. And you can debate whether or not there's a price tag. Plus, you can debate whether or not he needed the money. I know Phil's lost a lot of money. Well, but actually, like Rory never has. Rory's got so much money right now, he can't spend it. He can't lose enough of it if he were to get divorced. He just can't. I mean, Rory's got hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank. And Rory never has to hit a golf shot again.
I got called about getting a loan.
But so, there were a couple of guys in which I thought, for reputation, image-wise, it was a tough decision. But, I'm sorry, the John Deere Classic just doesn't mean as much to golfers as we all think it does.
No. By the way, here's a comment I think that sums it up. I forget who tweeted this. I wish I had the name. The most striking terms of the PGA, by the way, people stop saying PGA. It's PGA Tour. They're different, okay? People writing PGA. It's not the PGA. Anyway, it writes PGA LIV merger are these. 1, the Saudi Public Investment Fund is now the exclusive investor in the new golf entity. 2, the fund has the right of first refusal on any new investment. Yep. In simplest terms, they bought golf.
No doubt.
Let's finish it off with one comment here about this. I think you talked about it in your show today. The stipend that EA Sports is talking about giving the college players. Did you guys talk about that today? I don't know if I heard it on your show.
We had Bud Elliott on the show today, but I don't think we discussed that.
Okay. Well, it's just that there's some brewing possibility of boycott or something. That for people who don't understand, they have this game. Video game. It's very popular. I've not played it. I guess younger people certainly have. EA Sports, and they use player likenesses in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now they're being compensated $500 each. And people are saying that's ridiculous. That's now we're talking business now, and suddenly the people who are involved with the players are saying, "Wait, you need representation on this." Is this what it's going to be like, David?
Yes. And if you think about it, I mean, it's that way. And if a company were to use an actor or a rock singer in something, they have to either get permission or they have to compensate them for it.
Well, they get compensated. That's fine. They're getting compensated. But how much is enough?
Well, that's just, that's it. It also goes back to how close are we to making them employees, and then they get agents when they already have agents, but unions and, listen, the Supreme Court was the ones that's a very conservative Supreme Court, by the way, unanimously said they got to get money. This is ridiculous. The amateur model's illegal. I mean, the Supreme Court said that. This wasn't the NCAA in Indianapolis. This wasn't the, hated media. I mean, it was the Supreme Court, and it was a very conservative one at that. And if you look at the questions that were asked by the justices towards the NCAA, it were the conservative justices who were bent about this issue, not the liberal ones.
Okay.
So, I mean, this is unfortunately, buddy, this is capitalism. It's tough to argue college football and everything associated with it doesn't fall under that umbrella.
Right now, especially, I guess Tuberville is now up there in New York, and they're lobbying Manchin and other people to help negotiate some of the deals with college football. Have you heard about that?
Yes. And, do we want to discuss how much money Tommy Tuberville made as a head coach during his career?
No, not really. I
Okay.
know that they're taking the road of Congress. They've got to get things done through Congress, which is never a good idea. But anyway, David, as usual, you're a worthy opponent to debate, and you're great, and I love talking with you, even arguing occasionally. We don't argue, we just debate, and you make some great points. Enlighten us all, David, as you always do. He does it in the morning on his show, Miller and Moulton. They're on like 18 markets now all over the place. There's multiple.
No, I wish. No, same four.
Yeah.
That's
And,
really would love to get in others, but
how's Jacksonville treating you, David?
the city is fine. By the way, the Jaguars released their renditions as to what they want their stadium to look like. They would prefer to be gone for 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years after the Florida Georgia contract ends.
Right.
26 and 27. So in theory, that game would become a home and home, just like it did. What was it? 94, 95.
Right.
And then in theory, the stadium of the future, as they're calling it.
Yeah.
A lot of solar.
They built one in London. They built one in London as well, just in case. Yep. I mean, I would think that'd be a ticket to go play 2 games a year in London, probably, right?
Yeah, well, they make more money when they play in London than they do in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So, but I will say, if they go through with the stadium that was designed today, I could see college football playoff games, if not a national title game, that would get played there. I don't think Jacksonville will ever get another Super Bowl. I don't think we have enough hotels and what have you. But if we can house the Florida Georgia game, even though I know a decent number of people drive, but still, I mean, if Jacksonville can house Florida Georgia, I think they can house a college football playoff game.
Boy, things have sure changed since I was a columnist there, and we were hoping to get a pro football team. We're writing columns about, well, maybe there's no way Jacksonville will get a pro football team.
And buddy, something to keep in mind: how important is Trevor Lawrence in all of this? Because we all know you have a much better chance of getting money from taxpayers if the team in question is good.
Yep.
The Jags have never had a young franchise quarterback before. And if Trevor Lawrence over the next 3 years continues to be what we think he's going to be, then my guess is the mayor and the county and all that will have a much easier time getting the money they need to pay their half of this deal.
Yeah. Remember Denver Broncos one time went door to door with cannons and putting change in to save the franchise. By the way, I looked up and saw the score: Denver 59, Miami 52. So the Heat got to get something going. They played great in game 2, but.
Nuggets led by 5 at the half, scored the first 6 points of the third quarter. Heat have now scored the last 4 points.
Okay. David, it's always great to have you on. Next Wednesday, have a good week, my friend. Be well, take care, and coach those people up in Jacksonville how to do it right. Will you, buddy?
Buddy, thanks for calling, and I appreciate it, and all the best to your listeners.
Thank you very much, David. The great David Moulton. Always good to have David on. Thank you. All right, folks, I'm going to tell you about Renstar Medical Research. Let's see if Brendan's still awake back there. Could put up a logo of Renstar. We'll tell you about this. These are our friends that have supported our show for a long, long time. And they also support our city. And they have deep roots in the Gators. And Joey Sorrentino, forward defensive back, walk-on with the Revirus National Championship team. So we like to talk about them, and we like the things they do. They have a first-class, high-quality, patient-centered clinical research facility right there in downtown Ocala, where they're a stakeholder. The Renstar Medical Research brings cutting-edge clinical trials to Ocala in areas like Alzheimer's, dementia, psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraines, fibromyalgia, along with many other conditions that affect us right here in this community in this area of Florida. And they want to have clinical trials here so they can get information and DNA, what have you, from the people who live in this geographical area to include it in their research, which, by the way, they continue to partner with prominent pharmaceutical and biomedical companies throughout the medical industry. And they, of course, have these. If you'd like to be a part of these trials, you can go to rinstar.net, find out how to sign up for them if you qualify. In some cases, compensation for time and travel. Rinstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. Brendan, if you're still awake, let's call it a night. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Back tomorrow night with the boys and Orange and Blue Bloods.